and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, it's the world's most foremost chaotician. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
It's going pretty good.
I'm sorry, was that was that your Jeff Goldblum impression?
Well, it's gonna be a good podcast.
Incredible. The first episode of the year. It's a great way to start. I'm so thrilled.
Starting strong.
This week on the show, we are going to be taking a look at the 1993 seminal film Jurassic Park. We're looking at Jurassic Park. See, what happened was we're doing Jurassic Park for book club. Book club is today, if you're listening to this, the 3rd of January 2025, and of course we both ended up watching the movie after we read the book, because why would you not do that?
Right.
And we realized that we had quite a lot to say about the movie, and we had never done an episode on the movie, and we also feared that the book club episode would just turn into us talking about the movie the entire time. So we figured we might as well play it safe and just do an episode on the movie, get all that out of our system, and then tomorrow when we meet for the book club, we can just talk about the book and not the movie, which is going to be how it works, right?
That's going to be how it works. And this way, if you want to hear us talk about the book, you can go on over to the book club. And if you listen to us on the book club and you want to hear us talk about the movie, you can come on over here, and it works.
Well, I mean, if they're listening right now, that thing you just described has already happened.
That's right. So welcome.
So yeah, we're going to be talking all about Jurassic Park. It will be a full spoilers discussion. The movie came out 32 years ago, so if you haven't seen, the movie came out 32 years ago, Matt.
That's not possible.
Yeah. And then I thought we'd wrap up the episode by just briefly talking about the things that we did over our little 2-week break here. We took a couple weeks off from podcasting for Christmas and New Year's, and as I do every Christmas and New Year's, watched quite a bit of things, and I know you did as well. So I'm just going to talk about those things and then wrap up this here episode. How about that?
Sounds great.
All right, Matt, let's get into our main event and talk all about Jurassic Park. Matt, what the heck is this movie about?
Well, an industrialist invites some experts to visit his theme park of cloned dinosaurs. After a power failure, the creatures run loose, putting everyone's lives, including his grandchildren's, in danger.
This movie was written by David Kopp and Michael Crichton. It is based on Crichton's novel, of course, and it was directed by Mr. Steven Spielberg in what is arguably the greatest year of his career. I believe Jurassic Park and Schindler's List came out in 1993. Arguably two of Spielberg's best, maybe inarguably. I don't know.
I think this is probably my favorite film of his, and Schindler's List is undoubtedly one of his greatest works, objectively. So
yeah. The movie stars Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum. Matt, how long had it been since you had sat down and watched the film Jurassic Park, and what was your watch this time like?
Oh, possibly only a couple of years. My kids are in the age range where they can watch Jurassic Park, so I'm sure I've shown it to them or watched it with them a couple times over the years. For me, it's one of those movies that just somehow gets put on in the background when I'm doing other things, because it's just such a good movie. Sometimes I actually just boot it up and then I just fast forward to the T-Rex scene, because I'm just like, that's just the best, like it's the best 10 minutes of cinema in my opinion. It's just perfect.
It is absolutely one of the best sequences ever put to film, like inarguably. I think it's incredible. But I mean, the thing that always surprised me about this movie is it's an hour into the movie, that sequence. Like, it is 60 minutes with the characters, with the island, with the concept, with these ideas before all hell breaks loose, and we get the things that we're thinking about when we think about Jurassic Park, which is hiding and running from dinosaurs. Is an hour into the 2-hour film. I
think that's a good place to start, I think, because this is an unusual movie. We were kind of talking about this earlier today, that like Spielberg is a great director. That's not a surprising statement. I think one of the things that makes Spielberg a great director is that he really changes his style and depending on what the subject matter is and what it calls for.
Yeah.
And Jurassic Park to me doesn't really feel like anything else that he has done. I mean, it's funny you just mentioned that he did this the same year as Schindler's List. Like you watch those two movies back to back. I'm hard pressed to think of any like stylistic similarities between those two movies. I'm sure they're present, but I mean,
Y-
it's a mainly I'm just trying to point out this is an unusually made movie, and part of that
mhm.
is like he's like grounding you. He's spending a lot of time grounding you
Yeah.
and very very slowly ramping up tension. That's why it
Mhm.
takes an hour until the crescendo. That's why that 10 minutes is the best 10 minutes of cinema. As I said, it's because of the build up to that 10 minutes, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think part of that is, and I don't want to get too much into the book and spoil our conversation tomorrow, but part of that is because that is so much of what the book is doing is the build up to everything going to shit. And but the book is doing things that I think a little bit more complicated with that idea than the movie is. But like he felt like he had to keep that part in because that's such an integral part of the story. And it does, it enhances the movie. I agree with you. I mean, I think there's a sense of grandeur and wonder here and childlike wonder that I think is very Spielbergian. We've seen in a lot of his movies that is present in this film, but a lot of like the character work is. I think I said to you that this is maybe one of the first movies I ever experienced that had like a kind of intentionally naturalistic dialogue
Mhm.
where characters are kind of intentionally fumbling with their words. Like there's parts of this movie that I honestly did not ever know what the character was saying until I turned subtitles on
Mhm.
because it's just like it feels like a movie where I don't know, maybe if he intentionally chose not to ADR lines and go back and fix them, but there's moments where like the line Hammond says when he pops the champagne bottle, when Grant runs in and says, "Hey, we were saving that," and he says, "For today, I guarantee it."
Mhm.
I like didn't hear that line for 10 years.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't. It's part of it's his accent, part of it's how he says it, but there's like a lot of naturalism going on in the dialogue of this movie. And characters are like talking over each other. There's conversations happening simultaneously. It feels very much a lot of the time how people actually talk.
Yeah,
And that does something to ground you in a concept that is kind of outlandish, that we've cloned dinosaurs and we're about to get killed by them.
totally. I think it's funny because um, Jeff Goldblum actually he the Jeff Goldblum thing. It's
Yeah.
he doesn't do it that much most of the time. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't do that in every movie. That's
No.
actually mostly an Ian Malcolm thing,
Yeah.
which then got blown out of proportion because that's how society makes memes. But
Mhm.
I'm just adding to your point there that like Ian Malcolm is this character where Jeff Goldblum is doing a thing where he talks like a real person talks with stutters and hesitations and backtracking and there's a lack of polish to it because that's who that character is, and probably all the actors were getting some level of direction of like, I want this to be really naturalistic. I want you all to just sound like this is a documentary, and you're just having these conversations. I don't have any proof of that, but that's just what it feels like to me.
It does. I mean, the moment that sticks out the most to me is when they're just outside the raptor paddock, and they've just seen the velociraptors absolutely destroy this cow. Um, and there's two separate conversations happening at the same time.
Mhm,
There's Grant asking Muldoon details about the raptors, while at the same time Hammond is talking to Ellie about the security measures they put in place to make sure that the raptor pen is secure. And like they're happening at the same time, and the camera kind of focuses more on the Grant and Muldoon one because that's laying tension for raptor stuff later, but it's not like the other one isn't equally important, and it's there and you can hear it and pick up on it,
mhm.
and it's like this all feels very very intentional. There's also stuff with Ellie. She's kind of having to Laura Dern is having to do a lot of solo work throughout a lot of this movie. She goes off on her own a couple times, and there's lines and things that she does that I just find remarkable from like a dialogue perspective. I don't know why I love this so much, but there's a part where she's on the radio trying to get the power back on, and Hammond tells her she's got to pump the primer the
Mhm.
gray thing to turn the power back on. And for some reason, the fact that she counts while she's doing it is just a detail I love, because Hammond didn't say you're going to have to do it 5 times before it's primed. He just says you're going to have to pump it till it's primed, and then she's just going 1, 2, 3, 4. And I don't know like why that detail stuck out to me so much on this but it's just like that's a thing a person would do,
Mhm.
is like they're pumping something, they're just gonna, without even thinking about it, "Oh, I'm gonna count the number of times I do it." And I don't know why, like probably there's people listening, they're like, what are you talking about? I never even noticed that. But like it's just part of what makes the dialogue to me feel so
Yeah.
good.
Well, it's funny in that moment. I never really thought about this consciously until you mentioned it, but I wonder if it's partly because we're cross-cutting with Alan going, "All right, I'm gonna count to 3.
Yeah,
1,
yeah,
2," and then Timmy's not jumping off the fence, and so there's this element of like it's all a countdown. It's a countdown until Laura Dern pushes the button and
yeah.
electrocutes Timmy.
Yeah, a master class of cutting and of scene work and stuff. Like this is a thing Jurassic Park does that I think is really important, because some of the choices make no sense from a rational perspective. I think the greatest example of this is the geography of the T-Rex paddock makes no sense. We could talk about that scene that like
Yeah.
when the T-Rex steps out of the hole, the ground is at the level of they're on. When he tosses the car off the edge, suddenly it falls down like a 60-foot thing, whatever. It doesn't make sense geographically, but it doesn't matter. You don't care. I think the turning the power back on stuff is another one of those things. I love the detail that the lights are green and you have to turn them red to turn them on, which in no like that's
Yeah.
not how it works anywhere ever, but like it works for us because this is danger. It's signaling to us, it's getting us prepared for like when she gets down to the one that turns the fence on, this is a dangerous moment for our characters in a sense, so we should feel that danger. And it's just like a great little thing that really doesn't make sense, but it works.
Yeah. Totally. That's all true. I want so like the performances. I think we've talked a decent amount about that. We can come back to it.
Mhm.
I to me this movie is about spectacle, and
Mhm.
what's
Yeah.
what's great is it still works on that level in 2024, which was when I watched it a few days ago. Um, and but like the experience of watching it in the theater when you're a 7/8 year old,
Mhm.
it in 1998, when the movies that were coming out were not anything like even close to this. I mean, this movie stayed ahead of its time for many years. The build, like I so one thing I wanted to talk about was like the T-Rex scene, the T-Rex coming out. Like contextualize that in terms of the movie that you're watching. Pretend you're watching it for the first time. Um, the very first scene of the movie, we barely see any. We see like a little smidgen of raptor, see like part of his face, right?
Yeah.
Almost nothing. Later, we see the full size Brachiosaurus, which is in a kind of like grandiose. It's like, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful dinosaur, and like that's our moment of like, okay, we've been teasing you this whole movie with the idea that this movie is going to have dinosaurs in it. Here's a dinosaur, and it's beautiful, and you see uh, uh, the Parasaurolophuses or whatever they are in the distance,
Mhm.
and that's like beautiful. But and then we pull back away, and there's no dinosaurs. Maybe we see the little baby raptor in the hand. We see the raptor feeding scene, and it's almost like it's funny. I definitely didn't think this at the time, but it's almost like B movie, like teasing you because you don't see anything. You don't
Yeah.
see a single shred of raptor hide. You see the bushes shaking, and then they pull up the chassis that the cow was in,
Yeah.
and it's like we're being teased. Spielberg is teasing us. This is like the shark never seeing the shark, right?
Yeah, I was thinking of Jaws. Like you'd be watching this film and you'd be like, "Oh, we're doing a Jaws thing where we're never going to see these things at all." Yeah.
And you kind of feel like maybe we are just going to be teased. We're explicitly being teased. We drive by
Yeah.
the T-Rex paddock. The T-Rex doesn't come out. We do see the Triceratops. I should throw that in there. But like you don't see any of the scary dinosaurs
Yeah.
pointedly. And then finally the fences go down, and it's the coolest thing ever because it just steps out, and it's just like revelation, and
Yeah.
and it's it was terrifying when I was a kid, by the
Yeah.
way.
Oh yeah.
I wanna say that, like, now it's just awesome. When I was a kid, it was terrifying. Um, it was a terrifying scene. It was an incredibly effective scene. Um
Yeah. From the moment it puts its little T-Rex claw on the fence, like perfectly framed right above the 10,000 volts sign,
Mhm,
and you realize the power is off, and then like the sounds of this movie too, like not just the sounds of the roaring dinosaurs, but like as the fence cables begin to snap,
mhm,
and it has that very real like twang
yeah,
sound as they snap and fly away. Man, it's just like everything is working together. The impact tremors, of course, a part of it. Yeah, like it is this wonderful 60 minutes of build up to this one thing, and then it like it's just rare moments where like you have the build up and then you have the payoff, and a lot of times like the payoff is never as satisfying as the build up, right?
mhm,
But this is
yeah,
like everything in that sequence is just all time,
yeah,
all time. And like, I mean, we could talk every individual part of it, but it just all it works together. And I think what you said is important. It worked on me when I was a 7-year-old kid, and it still works on me in 2024. Um, I recently watched Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, or pieces of it,
uh-huh,
because we went to medieval times, and my son saw people fighting with swords and got obsessed with sword fighting, and so I was just showing him sword fighting scenes from movies, and so of course I did Duel of the Fates from Phantom Menace. Um, it's not very good. But my point of bringing this up is I think the CGI in Phantom Menace, a movie that came out in 1999, has not aged very well.
mhm,
Like the Gungan fight between the Gungans and the protocol droids, or not protocol, the whatever, the battle droids.
mhm,
Like that looks bad. It looks very flat. Like the lighting on it is bad. It looks like CG. But like this movie that came out 6 years earlier, it still looks fucking phenomenal.
mhm,
And it's mostly just because they lit it in a way that hides all of the problems in CG that existed at the time. And then of course they also mixed in practical effects, right? Like sometimes they're robotic mechanical dinosaurs, sometimes it's CG, and it just looks fantastic still.
yeah. It does. It really does end to end, actually. Like, I wanted to at least mention, like, it's not like we get the T-Rex scene and then that's it. It's like, no, the whole rest
Yeah.
of the movie, we've got fantastic set pieces. You know, you could just the Dilophosaurus scene with Nedry, the kitchen
Ugh.
scene with the Velociraptors, the
Mhm.
whole ending, kind of basically the whole ending of the movie, where um, you're getting what you came for, and gosh, it's such an important lesson that like somehow the industry didn't learn of just like how the animals are shot. Like the kitchen scene is a great example. It's very
Yes.
important that the lighting is kind of dim. It's not like it's dark. It's not like it's like everything's in shadow, but it's dim and atmospheric. And the animals moving through the environment is done in a very careful way where it focuses on the sounds they're making. You see the foot come by, tap, tap,
The
tap,
clicking of that claw. Oh,
clicking.
oh.
I'm sure that's an animatronic foot, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Um,
is.
you see it knows the spoon rattles. All these
Mhm.
things that they do to make the CGI or the fantastical elements interact with the real things in the scene. I feel like we talked about this recently with some other old movie that also did this right. And then it's like no one does this anymore. Everyone's
Yeah.
forgotten all of the things that you need to do to ground your fantastical elements. And like, gosh, when I was a kid, I don't know what was scarier, the T-Rex scene or probably the kitchen scene, really. Number one,
Yeah.
because it's kids and you can like put yourself in that position, but just like the constant, like they're just right there. They're right there. Um,
Yeah. Well, and every time one of the raptors charges, Spielberg cuts to the shot that the camera is between the feet
mm,
on the ground between the raptor feet as they charge. And it's really interesting because like I think there would be, if you do this same scene now in 2025, I think the you want to do CGI, right? And you're going to want to make the raptors seem really fast, because that's the thing about velociraptors, at least in the world of Jurassic Park, is that they are these incredibly fast creatures that move so quickly. Like, and like one thing that that Spielberg's cut to the feet does is it does kind of slow down the animal a little bit, right? Like you're seeing it take the steps from this low perspective. It's a little slower than what you would expect, but it's terrifying. It's still terrifying. You still get the feeling that it's chasing after the kid. You still get the feeling that it's right behind it. It's just not like crazy impossible fast that you could do in CG, where you could just make it dart across the room in 2 seconds. And
Mhm.
that's what we want to do now, because look how fast we can make these things. And you do just lose something in that. Like this movie, I mean, we could argue that the movie understood when to go practical and when to go CG. In reality, it was just a limitation of both of those technologies coming together, right?
Mhm.
Like there were moments that they could not do this CG because the technology was just not there yet, that they had or slash wanted to use these practical animatronics. And then there were things that the animatronics just flat out could not do. Like, I mean, the T-Rex animatronic was incredible, but it wasn't like a full Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? There
Mhm.
was a foot animatronic, there was a head animatronic. Like there wasn't like a full scale robot built T-Rex size. So any of the wide shots, any of the shots where we see the entire Rex in the frame, is at least partially CGI. And it just felt like, sometimes when you have these kind of limitations baked into your technology, like you're forced to come up with really interesting shots or really interesting lighting or things to do to hide things or use things, and it all came together kind of perfectly in all these sequences.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It, it's I feel like I almost wonder. I'm kind of speaking from ignorance here, but I feel like now it's almost like imagine you're a studio and somebody wanted you to make a scene like the kitchen scene. I feel like there would be actual pressure to be like, no, 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 no. We'll just do everything in CGI.
Hmm.
Don't spend money making an animatronic. We'll
Yeah.
just do it in CGI. It's going to look awesome. And like it, that's I feel like that's a loss because the subtle like shadows and reflections of the actual room's ambient light off of an animatronic foot, and
Yeah.
the clicking of that claw on the tile is just I don't know that we actually can consistently replicate that in CGI. Like we've seen a lot of CGI in our lives.
Hmm.
I feel like we've lost something there actually.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because there is the one moment in the movie that I can tell that it feels like an animatronic to me is when the raptor first opens the door, because like there's just this kind of weird movement in how it backs its head up and then pushes its head forward to open the door. It's just kind of jerky
Hmm.
a little bit, to where it doesn't feel animalistic. It feels like a machine. But even that, like, I wouldn't want to lose that, because there's still something so kind of powerful about the fact that you see it open the door, and this is not CG. It's a real, probably puppet hand turning the knob, and then it's using the animatronic to force the door open with its snout. And there's just something so tactile, like that's all real. It's there. It like hits the door first and then backs up and then rams the door before it charges in. And yeah, man, I just like I couldn't imagine it any other way. It's like we talked about The Thing a few years ago, and it's like, does does that look quote unquote real in The Thing with the practical effects there? No, it doesn't look like real, but it looks like that. It looks like The Thing. And I wouldn't want to take away any of the flavor of the movie in the name of realism.
Yeah.
And I think that's a similar thing here. Like we could make these dinosaurs look like, yeah, you could make in CG the dinosaurs that are in this movie look better, certainly. Like there are still moments where if you like squint at the computer graphics, like you can see it's a little more smoother. There's less texture on it than you would see in a CG character these days. But I just it man,
Mhm.
I would never want you to.
Yeah, I feel the same. Um, yeah. I was thinking about like the ending when you've got the raptors kind of chasing them around in the big open area, and it's
Hmm.
like even the sort of imperfection of that to me is just charming. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. Just just a just a perfect movie. Um,
We can't be done half an hour in. We're just like, it's perfect. It's great. I mean, I will say, like, especially having just read the book coming into this rewatch, which is an experience. I don't know if I've ever experienced it quite like this before, because as I think many people out there, many kids our age, like, saw the movie, loved the movie, and then immediately went and read the book because I was like, oh, there's a book that this stuff happens in. I have to read this book. So I never really have done it in the reverse of where I read the whole book and then watched the movie. It's pretty remarkable to me. We'll get into some of the problems I have with the novel tomorrow, but it is pretty remarkable the way in which this movie just, like, identifies and then fixes those problems just so simply
mhm,
and remarkably, and in a way that just, like, enhances all the characters. Like, I think Alan Grant is just this great character in this story, who not like, not this is not a complicated character. We don't need complicated characters in this story. This is not the type of movie this is, where the characters are really complex. It's just, this is a guy, he's a dinosaur man, and he's been thrown into a world in which the thing he's devoted his life to is no longer necessary anymore. Oh, also, he doesn't like kids. And so we're going to throw him in a situation both where he's just learned that he's never going to have to dig up dinosaur bones. And by the way, I love the setup of that, right? The setup of that is him in the Badlands. They've got this new technology to where they can just shoot some radar down there and get an image of the bones without even having to dig them up anymore. And in the movie, the Alan Grant is like, that's terrible.
mhm.
Like, that ruins everything. Why would we do that? And then he's immediately gone from that level of technology to something that's so leaps and bounds beyond that they've just recreated a dinosaur. And so, like, he's a man, um feeling his age and his oncoming extinction, while also not wanting to partake in the propagation of his species, right? He doesn't like kids, he doesn't want kids, and we get to see that transformation over the course of the movie, to where that beautiful part at the end, which I've seen 100 times, I've never paid attention to. But when he's just sitting on the helicopter, they're all safe now, and the two kids are still resting in his lap on his shoulder, right? Are sleeping on him.
Mhm,
And Ellie is just across the helicopter, just silently looking at him in this situation, and is just like, just content.
mhm.
And it's seeing his contentedness in this, and it's just mwah, it's perfect. It's perfect little character arc. It's exactly what it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that, Alan Grant's a great protagonist for this movie. I agree that, like, the movie makes a few smart choices that make him a stronger character than he was in the book. Um, I think in many places, though, the movie really identifies that the book is doing a particular thing, and then it just holds to that. Like, I'll just take Dennis Nedry as an example,
Hmm.
where, like, in the book he's just a giant selfish piece of shit, and then in the movie he's just a giant selfish piece of shit. Like, we don't
Yeah.
we don't need to complicate that. In fact, if anything, the movie makes it more caricatured, where he's played by the delightful, I forget that actor's name, actually.
I don't know his name. I
Dennis
know him as
Nedry.
Newman.
I always
I know
refer
him
to
as
him as
Newman.
Dennis Nedry no matter what he's in. So
I refer to him as Newman from Seinfeld,
yeah,
no matter what he's in.
yeah, his name is that because Wayne Knight. I knew it was something I
Yeah,
should
there we go.
recognize because it's a pretty cool name, actually. Wayne Knight. Like that's like an iconic character, actually. Like, he's
Yeah.
he's awful, and he's the one who causes all of this out of his short-sightedness and greed, and basically stupidity, because, like, he does he turns off all the fences, but it's like he remembers to leave the raptor fences on. So clearly he's aware of the risk of turning off the fences, but he just, like,
Yeah.
didn't think it through very well. Um, and then
Well,
he gets killed by the Dilophosaurus, which is a great scene.
I mean, it's a perfect scene, and he's much more the sole uh responsibility of this thing failing in the movie,
Mhm.
right? In the book, it's like, the book is doing a lot of things with showing how this failure was inevitable and talking about that. Like, it's funny, we still have Ian Malcolm, the chaotician, that, like, talks about the chaos theory and how all this works, but, like, the book is much more interested in exploring all the actual ways in which none of these people could ever control any of this, and the movie's more focused on, like, there was this one fucking guy
Yeah.
and this one fucking guy screwed everything up, actually. um but that's fine. That's fine. And it is a really wonderful scene. He's a perfect antagonist to like, you need kind of someone to hate in this. And Steven Spielberg clearly didn't want to make it John Hammond, who is definitely the person in the book that you can very freely hate.
Yeah.
And so Dennis Nedry is perfect for that. Like, I love the like the ironic cutting, right? Like when Sam Jackson is like, I can't get Jurassic Park back online without Dennis Nedry, and then cut to Nedry's death scene.
Yeah.
It's just like, just the movie understands itself perfectly, and its pace and how to dole all that stuff out to us.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it knows. I mean, that's why I'm focusing on Nedry. Is it kind of makes him, if anything, a bigger character than he was
Mhm.
in the book. But I think it's a plot important character. Whereas, I
Yeah.
think probably like Wu, the geneticist, is a little bit sidelined. But also, I think they managed to like pack in a lot of like subtext,
Yes.
like a fun thing. I'm going to do what I said we wouldn't do and sort of compare the two. But like in the book, the fun thing about him is like he can he's sort of drunk on the power of being able to do anything and just like sculpt life to his will. Um,
Hmm.
but also, anytime anybody asks him a direct question in the book, he's like, "Oh, I don't know," and it's really fun. Like I never noticed that as a kid, certainly. And it's making fun of, or at least like putting a pointer on a certain type of like scientist engineer type who's just like, oh, they only think in terms of like the process that they have learned, and
Hmm.
they don't, and they've done it 1,000 times over the years, and they don't think about any of the consequences of it, or implications of it, or adjacent, like slightly adjacent things that might be related to the. It's just like, no, that's not what I do. That's not my area. um and and clearly he's messed everything up. Like it's his fault basically that the dinosaurs can breed, because he put the amphibian DNA in the dinosaurs to patch up their genomes. And he just did it because it's like, oh yeah, just throw some alligator in there, throw some bird in there, throw some frog in there, whatever, just got to fill the holes. Doesn't matter. The animals come out looking about right. And it turns out like, no, you have no idea what you've done. Actually, you have no idea. And um and that's like subtextually all in the movie. The one detail actually that I really appreciated on this viewing, which I never noticed before, is from the very moment we see him, he's got his clipboard out, and he's like furiously erasing something with his pencil eraser on the clipboard. um which is fantastic visual language for saying like, oh, he's screwed something up, and he's
Yeah.
he's trying to erase it. And then not only that, but there's a second time later in the movie when we see him just casually erasing something off the clipboard. Like very clear intentional visual storytelling. It's funny because I was watching this with my parents because they were here for Christmas, and my mom goes, "You're not even supposed to use pencils in a lab notebook. Supposed to use pen so that you can't erase things, so that there's a record of everything that happened." Which is, again, it's like, well, in Jurassic Park they use pencils because
Yeah.
because they don't want a record. I love that. Like, I love that's very Spielbergian to me, is taking an idea that's sort of very abstract and figuring out a way to just sprinkle it into the background where you would never notice it unless you were, analyzing it on this level.
Yeah, but I think you're right. You would never notice it consciously, but I think it does add towards a perception of a character
Mhm.
as a guy that doesn't really know what's going on. Because yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Wu is a not focused on character in this version of the story at all. But I do like, I never consciously noticed what you're talking about with the eraser, but I do have a very clear image in my mind's eye of him erasing. I think literally while he's being told that, like, by Ian Malcolm, like, you're saying that a group of females will breed. He's holding an eraser in his hand and erasing something while that scene, like, it's so demonstrative of how wrong he is
Mhm.
about all this. And I think it's perfect. Your brain picks up on it even if you don't consciously. I love that you called that out because I had never consciously noticed that.
Yeah.
But it's there. It's all there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the famous having the two female belt buckles and tying the knot, like, which
Yeah.
been noticed a million times before us, but just like that being a metaphor for life finds a way.
Yes.
Grant finds a way. Um,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
so
Yeah. It's a perfect it is it's a perfect like meta foreshadowing for what's going to happen, but also it is a perfect character moment to show how Grant is going to solve a problem
mhm,
an uncharacteristic way if he has to.
mhm,
If he can't figure something out, he's going to solve a way around it, and that's essentially what he does.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah. Man, what a great movie. I love this movie.
I do too.
Um I think the character of Hammond is so fascinating to me, especially on this. Again, I don't want to focus on the book too much, but the character in this movie is very, very different from the character in the book. Very different. I
Mhm,
think this is probably some of the most dramatic changes Spielberg made with this movie was how he treats the character of Hammond, and I think it's almost because it just seems like he naturally has a lot of sympathy for this guy. Like he always comes across as being utmost and sincere in everything he's doing here, like earnestly believes this is going to be this incredible place. Like when it's the lawyer talking about how much money they could make off this place, he's the one that's like, no, 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 this is supposed to be for everyone. What I wanted to do here, the scene he had with Ellie, with the melting ice cream, is this perfect scene too, because it's him kind of desperately holding on to this idea, but not in like that there's a scene very similar to that in the book where it's him just like refusing to ever learn his lesson about anything, and the scene in the movie is not necessarily him refusing to learn the lesson. It's just him like desperately trying to hold on to it as it melts all around him. Again, the ice cream is
mhm.
this perfect kind of visual metaphor for what's happening, is he's frantically trying to eat this spared no expense ice cream while it's melting around him. um and the moment that really stuck out to me was, a moment that we've seen a thousand times before, but like I never really thought about, which is the kind of smart alecky comment Grant has as he approaches the jeep to hop in and escape the island to the helicopter. He says, Mr. Hammond, after careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse your park. And the thing that I love is that John Hammond says, so have I, right?
Mhm.
And this great moment at the end, this totally earned moment where he has experienced everything here, the danger that his grandchildren were under the entire time, the complete failure not just in Dennis Nedry but in everything in their ability to understand and predict these animals. And he all he has to say at the end, all he has to say to complete that arc is, so have I. And that's it.
Yeah,
And it's perfect. It's perfect.
totally. Yeah, that he's another character who gets an arc that's not in the book. And in the book, he's like, it's interesting because yeah, both versions of Hammond are like sort of willfully naive,
Yeah.
or they're just like everything's gonna be fine. It's all about vision. It's all about having the will to create something amazing. And I'm one such who has that will. And they're very grandiose. They're very um I think even the one in the movie is a bit megalomaniacal. Like I think he's played as an eccentric old weirdo,
Hmm.
but like in the movie it's much more, well, he's harmless. He's well-meaning. He's a well-meaning eccentric old weirdo.
Yeah.
He's not just like a self-absorbed sort of tyrant. And that, I think, just a lot of it just comes down to the literal performance, where it causes us to be a lot more soft toward him and feel like his like you said, his decision,
Yeah.
his gradual realization that he's caused a lot of damage and understanding that he's made a mistake is good, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you hire Richard Attenborough as this character, you're very clearly
Hmm.
going for something that's very different, because, like, the guy that played freaking Santa
Yeah,
Claus in Miracle on 34th Street is not gonna is not gonna come off as the monster that John Hammond is in the book. Which I think you're right. Like they have that same like base starting point, but it is very clear to me that I think he said this when we were talking the other day, is like they took all of his bad qualities in the book and they just put them in the lawyer Gennaro
hmm
in this movie,
hmm
which worked perfectly because then we get to see him get eaten. And it's
yeah,
like the ongoing lesson of the entire Jurassic Park series is that if you are morally corrupt, you will be eaten by a dinosaur,
yeah.
um, and you'll feel better about it. It's perfect.
It's yeah, it is interesting. In the moral universe of I think the moral universe of the movie is a bit different from the moral universe of the book, simply because of who dies and who lives and why.
Sure.
Like Arnold. Arnold does not die in the book, as far as I recall. No. Arnold does die.
He does.
Definitely.
I don't think we ever see his death. He just like disappears to turn the power back on,
Yeah.
and I don't think we find his arm like Ellie does in the
Right.
movie.
He dies. I actually was thinking about Muldoon. I think Muldoon does
Yeah,
not die in the book.
he does not know.
And it's like, well, he's competent and he knows what he's doing. And so he doesn't die. But being competent in the movie does not save you, because Muldoon in the movie is still competent. He just is not so competent that he fails to underestimate or I did a double negative there. He underestimates the velociraptors is the point.
Yeah, in a scene that, like, once again has been perfectly set up for us by the movie, right?
Mhm.
Because you have that sequence at the beginning when Alan Grant tortures a 10-year-old, which I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a parent now. Like, I loved that scene when I was younger. I was a parent. I'm like, where's this kid's dad, and
Uh-huh.
why is he letting this man do this to him?
Yeah.
um but a wonderful scene that teaches you about the like, you're not even aware of it, but you're learning the raptor's hunting pattern, and then you get to see it on display in the scene. You see, like, and the way the brain works is unless you're like really quick on it, you might not even realize what's about to happen
Mhm.
before it does. But the second it happens, you're like, oh yeah, we were set up for this. This is how the raptors hunt. And it's another one of those, like, this is the thing I love about this movie is we talk about like people's obsession with like plot holes and contrivances and unrealism like the raptor like sticks its face out and says hi before it jumps on
Yeah.
him, which like would never happen, but it makes a great scene.
Yeah.
And so Spielberg says, we're doing it.
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah. Well, I think for me that works so well because the raptors basically have personalities, and
Yes.
like so I'm also thinking like that's a perfect example. There's also like when they're in the kitchen and the raptor sees the reflection of it's not Ellie, it's
Lex.
Lex sees the reflection of Lex, and instead of just going, which I feel, by the way, is a thing that a modern movie would do. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
it just goes. It does this like, I can't, perform this over audio, but it like snarls. It does this like, oh, I see you, and I'm gonna get, and it like rears back, and it like like this like rictus like snarl on its face, and only
Mhm.
after it is like emotionally reacted does it then run, and it's like, oh, it's like. I mean, I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but what it is the raptors hate these people for
Mhm.
putting them in a cage. Like these are smart animals. These are like chimps where they're like, I'm going to kill you in a painful way on purpose because I hate you for putting me in a cage. And that's the way these raptors actually behave. I think unlike the T-Rex, where the T-Rex is just like, meat.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, that's it's funny. Like that comes across in the animation and in the fact that the Raptors basically taunting Muldoon, like, "Hey, gotcha." Um, I totally buy it. Like I don't see it as a plot hole. I see it as like, yeah,
Yeah.
the Raptors are dicks.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense within the world of the movie. I mean, just like the T-Rex somehow sneaking up, and even though it's been established that every time the T-Rex walks, there's impact tremors,
Uh-huh.
suddenly it's in the visitor center at the end of the movie, and nobody notices it's coming. It doesn't, like, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? Like, this is the point. Like, this is the thing we've always said, where if you're picking up on logic errors or plot holes or inconsistencies or contrivances in movies, it probably means the movie isn't working on you for some entirely independent reason, because those exist in every movie, but you just don't care. You shrug it off because it builds to a perfect moment. Because yes, the T-Rex being the ultimate savior at the end of the movie is a wonderful payoff moment. Yeah, I mean, the T-Rex roaring as the "When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth" banner flutters down from the ceiling to make this perfect shot is contrived, but who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
Because it's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Yeah, I think that's the thing is like we kind of want a movie to be so good that it can get away with that kind of stuff because we're just like, yeah, sure, fine. It's not like when you're on the roller coaster at Disneyland, you're like critiquing the plausibility of the characters hanging out at the top of the loop. No, that's awesome because you're on a roller coaster. and we
Yeah.
want a movie to be like a roller coaster and have us swept up into it that way.
Yeah. How did you feel about the kids?
I've never minded. I mean, I've watched this movie so many times that it's one of those ones I can just watch it in my head.
Sure.
So like I don't know that I can be objective, but I've never minded the kids. I've always thought their, performances were perfectly adequate. Um
hmm
uh, Kids in movies don't typically bother me. So I don't know. Did you have a specific point you wanted to make about the kids?
No, I love them. And this is another, again, we're stepping on tomorrow's conversation, but I think the book has a kid's problem to it,
Mm,
and I think the movie just kind of effortlessly fixes it with some small choices. Namely, like it switches the ages of the boy and the girl, and then it gives it gives Lex something in this movie to do besides just yelling and being annoying.
mhm,
Um, so I mean, like everyone jokes about the it's a Unix system joke, but like we've given Lex something to do
mhm.
in the end of the movie, which I think is really important.
Yeah. Well, also,
Um,
so the other thing there that works really well is there's like two themes: dinosaurs and technology.
uh-huh.
Okay, and Tim is the dinosaur kid, and so Grant eventually kind of gets along with him because Grant also loves dinosaurs. And then Lex is not an outdoorsy person. She's not a dinosaur person. She doesn't know anything
hmm
about the dinosaurs, but she's good at technology, which Grant hates. Grant hates technology, but only because of her and her familiarity with technology are they able to turn on the doors and
Yep.
save the day. So it's all in there. It's all connected.
It's all in there. Yeah, it is. It's really good. And the Tim, the dinosaur guy, is the one that gets shocked by the technology. That's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you? Okay, 10,000 volts, Mister
Uh-huh.
Scientist. Would you live? Could you live 10,000 volts?
I think so. I mean, it depends on.
So if he's not on the ground, it's not like the current's not exiting him, right? Like, in a way that it would, like if you were standing on the ground and got hit by lightning or something.
Um,
I
Gosh,
don't know how
I should.
electricity
Well, I
works.
really should know the answer to this question. I mean, it might be a problem that he's touching like multiple wires, because then
Yeah,
basically he can complete a circuit with his body between the wires.
sure.
Maybe some of those wires are ground. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is an interesting point that if none of those are grounded, then it shouldn't actually like throw him off like that. Um,
But
yep.
wouldn't even when like even if it like would a circuit, wouldn't your muscles tense? Like
Yeah.
again, I don't care, but like I feel like he would involuntarily grab on tighter than
Th
fly off of it.
That's like the way most people die when they get electrocuted. You're correct. Is they like clamp their hand around the thing that's shocking them, and they can't let go, and then
hmm
it kills them. Um, so I haven't thought about this very hard, but like voltage and current are different things, and the thing they say in the electrician context is it's not the volts that kill you, it's the amps that kill you. So like you basically design an electric fence to give a really unpleasant shock that is actually unlikely to kill anything because you don't actually want to kill the animals.
hmm
You want like as high a voltage as you can get away with without having a lot of amperage, to put it simply. And uh, uh, not that you have a lot of choices there because anyway, I'm waffling because I don't want to go into an engineering lecture in the middle of our analysis of Jurassic Park. The point is, I I don't think anything in that scene was realistic anyway, but that's okay. I don't really care.
Sure. The part that always actually bothered me is when Grant like picks up a stick and throws it at the fence and like nothing happens and he's like, "Oh, I guess the power's still off." I'm like, "Wouldn't if you threw a stick at a electrified fence, I don't think anything would happen if it was still electric.
Uh
Like,
huh.
I don't think I would think it would just fall down
Yeah.
for like the same reason like a bird could land on an electrified wire."
Yeah. Okay. I am going to go on this tangent. I've decided.
Okay, do
But
it.
it's a different.
It's my fault.
It
I set this
it's a
up, so
but it's a different tangent than the engineering lecture tangent. It's because when I was a kid and I think I was with my Boy Scout troop, we went to a disgusting dairy farm. Um, It's just the worst. And there were electrified fences
Oh, that's
everywhere.
awful. That's awful.
And it's interesting because it was more like a wire, like it just, or a few wires that were just kind of strung, across an area.
Hmm.
And because we were Boy Scouts, I think you know where this is going.
Yes.
So I shocked myself on purpose many times for fun, but like it's quite unpleasant, but not so unpleasant that it kept me from doing it a few times. But the point of me bringing this up is like a cow is a giant animal. There's no way that voltage is going to do anything other than like startle the animal for a second. But the thing about a cow is it doesn't know what the fuck just happened because it's a cow. So what it decides is I'm not going to go over there. So that's the point of an electric fence. It's not to like electrocute things. It's to like startle them, and because they're an animal, they're like, okay, I'm not going to screw with that. That seems unpleasant, and then they learn to stay away from the fence. So like there's no need to make the fences extremely high voltage. If anything, like if we're going to sort of do tactical realism on Jurassic Park, it's like the problem with the T-Rex fence was that it was simply not even close to being strong enough to hold back a T-Rex. It was entirely based on the idea that the T-Rex is going to avoid this fence that was, unpleasant to touch because it shocked it.
Yeah.
And that's not you notice that zoos don't do that. Like the lion enclosure is not surrounded by an electric fence, because I'm pretty sure the lion would just, if it saw a little toddler turning its back on the fence, it would just run right through that fence. Because they try to run through the glass all the time, as you can see from many TikToks.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if this was entertaining or what, but
well, I mean, I think it's great because I think what it demonstrates is another way the movie is subtly setting up stuff that exists in the book, which is that the people that built this park had no fucking clue what they were doing with any of this, and they like put stuff up because they were like, oh yeah, that's big and tall and powerful and imposing, and certainly will stop this animal. And the lesson there is, of course it won't. In the book, it makes this a little more textual, right? Like there's a conversation about how like we built the enclosures with the idea that these animals would have a certain strength and a certain speed, and we had our like response weapons and everything as if they could run a certain speed, and they're all faster than we thought. Every single one of them is just way faster and way stronger than we thought they were, and we haven't updated any of our shit to be in line with what we understand these animals are as now they don't go into that kind of detail in the movie, but like I think this is all part of it, right? Is this like, you're absolutely right that this fence that they built, like if the only thing the fence is doing is being electrified to hold back the animal, then yeah, it doesn't make sense to be the design of fence it has. Like the second the fence goes down, like he rips through those wires as if they're nothing. So yeah, it just stupid. It was all stupid. And the same thing happens with the velociraptors. I mean, like the second that it goes down, it's like they're chewing through this stuff.
Right.
And like, yeah, that would not happen in a zoo. There's very little places in a zoo where like, the power's out. Now all the animals are going to get out. No, of course not, because you'd never build a zoo that way.
Yeah. It's also, I really do think they put a lot of thought into this sort of thing in the movie, because if you think about like that T-Rex's life, no cars have ever really come by that way. Yeah. So it's plausible that that's like the first time it ever touched that fence. I'm not saying it. Yeah. I'm not saying I know that, but the point is like it wouldn't necessarily be afraid of the fence a priori, and now it's touching the fence and the fence isn't hurting it, so it just steps through because why not? Because this is the first time they've run anything through the park, and so they're uncovering all these issues. I remember being a kid, and like it's funny what you remember. Like my mom like reading me some article she was reading about the movie, and how like the Dilophosaur is interpreting all of Nedry's actions as like aggressive, where he like throws a stick at it and then starts yelling at it, and it's like in his perspective, he's like being playful and trying to just like gently nudge it away. But it's
Mhm.
like if you're an animal, everything in that situation can be contextualized as aggressive. Um, I thought
Yeah.
that's always stuck in my head as like the level of thought they put into the behavior of the animals. Um,
Yeah, well, he's talking like that, but he's also saying things like, "Fetch the stick, stupid.
mhm,
I'm gonna run you over when I come back down."
mhm.
Like it's fun stuff because like yeah, it's never really clear whether the animal understands that or not. But like you're like,
Yeah. Well,
oh,
all the animal hears is a large thing going like "Roar, roar, 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 roar," like which it's
yeah,
not a dog, right? It doesn't know.
yeah.
So
And then it fucking eats him. What a scene! I love that scene, and that's one of the scenes that plays out remarkably close to how it does in the book, actually.
mhm.
And it's because it's just really well constructed. I think the only thing, like, I don't think it. uh, So, can we talk about maybe how we don't think dinosaurs look like they look in this movie anymore?
Uh,
Um,
yeah. Although I definitely have a huge bee in my bonnet about all of this, but yes, go on.
I mean, that's why I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to give you the
Oh, good.
opportunity, unless you want to save it for tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, like we continue to learn more about dinosaurs. But I want to be clear here. Like we're doing like paleontology is like the most ridiculous job ever because it is so much guesswork.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at rocks that used to be bones and like trying to determine all these kind of habits and tendencies of animals that have been dead for millions of years,
Uh-huh.
like millions of years, that it's so much detective and guesswork. The fact that we know as much about these animals as we do is kind of remarkable, actually.
It is, and it's been kind of delightful having been a dinosaur kid and kind of keeping my finger on the pulse of paleontology in a very non-serious way over the years. That like stuff
Mhm.
that I was taught when I was a kid has been radically changed over time.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like the thing you wanted to mention specifically is the idea
The
that
feathers. Yeah.
that now scientists believe that a lot more dinosaurs had feathers, um, which I think probably I'm not actually up to date on this. My perception is that like probably the theropods, like the Velociraptor type dinosaurs, had feathers, but also Velociraptors were a lot smaller.
Yeah,
And
they make them like 6 foot tall animals in this, and they're more like not chicken sized, but not too much bigger than that.
maybe like more like turkey sized. I mean,
Yeah.
there were big theropods. Like there were all sorts of dinosaurs on the spectrum between T-Rex in size and, a chicken. And they all kind of
Mhm.
looked basically like a Velociraptor slash T-Rex body plan. So you don't want to, you probably could have found one that was 6 feet tall and they just, whatever. I mean, you could even kind of hand wave and just say like, well, maybe Wu accidentally made them 6 feet tall. Like, gave.
I mean, that's the thing about this entire conversation is you could hand wave this all away, and the
Mhm,
fact that like a question that the book asks that we'll get into tomorrow is like, are these actually dinosaurs?
mhm,
Right? Like, and the movie doesn't really address this because I think the movie wants you to just say yes, these are dinosaurs. But yeah, you could hand wave away all this as this. No, we mixed all this DNA, we've reconstituted DNA, we plugged in gaps. These are not dinosaurs. We just bred animals and cloned animals until we got a thing that looked like what we expect a dinosaur to look like, and we said, "Yay, we did it! Look, dinosaur, here we go." So yeah, you could hand wave all of this conversation away, but it is just interesting how much this has changed over the
mhm.
past couple decades.
I guess this is a minor point, but I sort of took a subtext from the book that the dinosaurs not being able to see things that weren't moving might have just been another little accidental Henry Wu modification where that was basically amphibian DNA that he just tossed in there, and now as
Yeah.
a consequence, the dinosaurs can't see you if you don't move. It's not that these hunter dinosaurs can't see things that aren't moving. I I don't know if the book said that in so many words, but that was the sense I got from the book. Whereas the movie just kind of makes it like, no, Grant actually just already knows that T-Rex can't see you if you don't move.
How?
Yeah.
How? Why would a carnivore dinosaur require I mean, yes, like we like our eyes are much better at seeing movement than non-movement, right? Like we're like you see movement in the corner of your eye, like you
Yeah.
will immediately train on it. But like also this is one of the only things that really bother me about the movie, even as a kid, was like when he first says that, you're like, how do you know that?
Uh-huh.
Like I think in the book it works really well because he basically like stumbles upon that discovery over the course of the novel
Right.
where he is like watching their behavior and is like, wait a minute, they can't see me. But like even in the book, it's kind of like, yeah, but they can like smell you, right? Like the scene where the where the T-Rex is right up in his face and it's like he's freezing so he can't. It's like, yeah, but you have a smell to you.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I guess it's raining, so maybe he can, but like there's no way.
Yeah.
That'd be the worst hunter ever.
Yeah, I think this is exactly one of those things where it never bothers you while you're watching the movie. It's only on
Yeah.
like your, 10th viewing that you're like, it doesn't really
Yeah.
make sense. Um,
Well, because it creates this really awesome scene where like he runs over to Lex and grabs her and says, "Freeze. Don't move. I can't see if you don't move." And it's this wonderfully tense sequence where the dinosaur's just right there, right in front of them,
mhm.
and like it breathes so hard it blows Grant's hat off his head.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
but yeah, it works. It doesn't make a lot of sense actually.
Speaking of the fantastical element interacting physically with the scene, the
Yes.
blowing of the
Yeah.
hat is just another thing where I'm like, you don't see that in Jurassic World.
Yeah, well, and when the T-Rex like pushes through the glass
Mhm.
in the sunroof and like it's not like it's not just glass shatters, like it's you can tell it's plexi get glass.
Uh-huh.
You tell like breaks off in a certain part but not in other parts, and it's like the mouth is like trying to get around the glass, like the
Uh-huh.
detail and the tactical.
Yeah,
It's so
right.
good. It's so tactile. I love it.
Almost killed those 2 stunt people that were not expecting the plexiglass to break, actually.
Okay, well look, things happen.
Yeah, yeah. It's Hollywood, man.
Yeah,
Um,
sacrifices are
yeah.
made.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's any evidence that like Brontosaurus and, T-Rex had a ton of feathers, but for some reason people wanna say that they did, and it offends me because,
Well,
I don't think they did.
I mean, the other thing is like we human beings are so bad at the scale of all this stuff. Like we're talking about animals that lived millions of years and millions of years apart from each other, right? Like these different periods of dinosaurs were millions of years apart from each other.
Mhm.
And so like we classify all these things as dinosaurs and say like these are all the same type of animal. But no, it
Yeah.
was it was millions of years of evolution. So yeah, I mean it's very possible that a dinosaur that lived in the Jurassic period and a dinosaur that lived in the Cretaceous period looked completely different from each other because that's it's we're the scale we're talking about here is stuff that we can't even truly comprehend.
Yeah, totally, totally. I mean, it's fun. Like that's why it kind of gets to be really fantastical because like we just don't know any of this, and the movie has fun with the idea that we don't know because like for example the Dilophosaurus. Basically, actually, this is one of my favorite things about the movie, and it was one of my favorite things as a kid because it took this idea of like, look, there's a lot we don't know about these things, and then it centered that, and the Dilophosaurus is the best example because they cloned this animal and basically thought they were cloning something kind of like a velociraptor, where it's like, yeah, it's little, it's got sharp teeth and claws, and they didn't even know until they had cloned it that it could spit blinding venom and that it had this like frill because the frill is not in the fossils. So the idea is like it looks, it behaves, it has abilities totally different from what you thought from the fossil record. Um, and that's like possible. It's possible. Like it's possible that dinosaurs have all kinds of stuff, like extraneous stuff that wouldn't make it into a fossil that we just have no idea about. It's possible that
Yeah.
dinosaurs are, maybe there's some dinosaurs that have wild colors. Maybe there's some of them that look like a zebra. Maybe there's some of them
Yeah.
um, that have like a fleshy sac or something that wouldn't get fossilized. We
Sure.
wouldn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great, and I think that's another part of the kind of the subtlety that the movie's playing with is that they made this dinosaur had no idea, put it in a enclosure and was like, oh, it can spit
Mhm.
50 feet,
Mhm.
50 feet. Fuck. um Hold on,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to change stuff around a bit here. It's all this is some of the best parts of the books, is it talks about those kind of realizations and an unpreparedness, and it's like gets to the center of what a lot of the book is about, but it just works very well as this thing that's happening in the movie. Like the same with like the like is this West Indian lilac? Yeah, we know it's poisonous, but the animals don't eat it. Oh, are you sure?
Uh-huh.
The movie doesn't actually ever resolve that scene, by the way,
It's
which I think is interesting.
yeah, no, it's funny. I always, it successfully distracts you away from it, but the
Hmm.
book the book is much more concerned about that subplot. Um,
Yeah. Well, because I mean, because it's all of what the book is doing. Talk more tomorrow. Like it's really reinforcing and over and over and over again this idea that they had no idea what they were doing
mhm,
with any of this stuff. They just had no idea, and we're just kind of winging it and expected to be able to control it. Like just one of my favorite concepts of the book is like, animals, like you teach it and it'll learn to behave based on you negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, like we assume these animals will act the same way, but we don't know.
mhm,
We have no idea.
yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting. I imagine we'll talk a lot more about chaos theory tomorrow, and the
Yep.
character of Ian Malcolm, because he's really almost an author insert mouthpiece
Yes.
in the book, in a way where he's, Ian Malcolm is a secondary character in this movie, and really I would argue, like, we don't get to hear his full argument, which is probably fine, because it's a little bit too didactic, but the idea of chaos theory is central to what Crichton is trying to talk about. Whereas, like you said a minute ago, in this movie, it's more just like, yeah, I mean, the park was kind of not put together all that well, but it's really
Yeah.
Dennis Nedry who's the cause of everything. Whereas I really think in the book, it's more like, look, this was going to fail one way or the other. It could have been Nedry. It could have been something else. If it wasn't Nedry, it would have been something else a week later.
Yeah. Well, it
Um,
was already failing, right? Like in the book, dinosaurs are getting off the island, they're breeding uncontrollably, and they're completely untracked.
mhm,
Like the whole subplot in the book about how they see velociraptors on a transport ship and they're in a race against time to inform the like it was like independent of Dennis Nedry, it was failing.
mhm,
So yeah, yeah. But that's not what this movie wants to do. And I don't think there's room for it in this movie. Again, I think this is why this is such a really tight script, is because it completely recognizes the things that worked the best about the book in a cinematic way, and it focuses in on those.
mhm.
I think one of the most damning things I can say about the book is um like all the you just look at the movie and it's like, oh yeah, that set piece was great, that's why it made it into the movie. And it's like, oh yeah, that one wasn't great, and that's why it's not doesn't appear till the third movie,
Right.
which wasn't good.
Right, right. Yeah, and even then, they didn't quite make it
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I like overall we've been talking for like an hour, but like I think this is one of those rare films that is just gonna age perfectly, and like maybe one day we will know how to clone dinosaurs, and yet still I think this movie will work.
Totally. I agree.
I mean, like that was a thing I feel like in the 80s and 90s. Like this is one thing the book gets into a lot, is like the like bioengineering as this new frontier that's going to change everything. And I'm not saying it's not, but I don't think it's quite panned out
Yeah,
the way everyone thought, or that certain people thought it was. Like there I remember there were like a lot of things talking about after this movie came out. They were like, could we really do this? Like, is this a thing we could actually do? And be like, I mean, yeah, probably.
I
Like, well, no, not really.
so the specifics about dinosaurs, I'm pretty sure they've just never found any real dinosaur DNA. Like, the trick with the blood and the amber doesn't really work, actually, which is sad. But,
I mean, like, even if it did work, like, just like it just seems to me that the it would have to be like the pitch perfect like coincidence of yes, a mosquito bites 17 different species of dinosaurs and then gets immediately stuck in sap before it has digested any of the blood. And then that sap is perfectly fossilized into amber, and we can find it. It's like
Yeah.
needle in a haystack times 1,000.
Yeah. I,
But even outside of being able to find it, I don't think that idea actually works.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I listened to a really interesting podcast the other day that was about this company that's currently trying to clone woolly mammoths and thylacine. Um, Thylacine is the Tasmanian tiger that only went extinct like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So you can find plenty of woolly mammoth DNA. You can find plenty of Tasmanian tiger thylacine DNA,
Hmm.
and also there are animal like there's. I think one crucial thing there is like, well, we have African elephants and we have other large marsupials in the case of the thylacine, and so there's sort of a way to bridge the gestation, which is something, again, they kind of hand wave away these enormous science problems. Like, okay, let's say for the sake of argument that you could recover the genome of a dinosaur. I don't think I think the idea of just like making a artificial egg and all like all that's going to require a lot more work and iteration. It's fun.
No, they just found a company that made like really good plastic
Yeah.
eggs.
No, and like that's all fine. It's like the world of these stories is like a fantasy world where it just turns out that biotechnology is like 100 times easier than it actually is.
Yeah.
And I think part of Crichton's whole like idea like thesis, or like maybe even his ethos and approach toward fiction, is like, we don't actually know how dangerous these things are. We're kind of just rolling the dice every time we create some new technology. Uh, uh like maybe, I mean, for example, it is actually pretty easy if you know the smallpox genome to make a smallpox virus.
Hmm.
That's terrifying, and that's true.
Hmm.
Don't need any, like, that's way more terrifying than cloned dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So he's like, it's almost like he really wants to, and no coincidence, by the way. I mean, his first book was about maybe not his first book. I forget the order. One of his prior books was the Andromeda strain, which is about a
Hmm.
pathogen. So like he's very aware of like the terrifying danger of biology and biotechnology, and he
Yeah.
wants to make us aware of it. And so yes, he exaggerates it a bit so that he can tell a fun story, and because it would be super boring if it was like perfectly realistic. But
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah,
that's
for
fine.
sure.
That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think like part of the idea is that like this firm belief that if you throw enough money at a problem, we can figure it out, even if maybe it was a bad idea for us to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing in this movie is like they even kind of say in the book that like the technology that they used to bring dinosaurs back was like 20 years away, and he's like, you have 5, but I'm going to give you essentially unlimited money.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, well, in that case I can do it
Hmm.
because money.
Yeah.
um, it's good.
Yeah.
Money's good.
Right. But of course, it's going to be a lot less cautious and methodical because we're
Yeah,
rushing.
of
Right.
course, of course. All right. Anything else you wanted to say about Jurassic Park? I think we went a little bit more into the book stuff than I wanted to, but I think there'll be plenty of room for a lot of conversation next week, or sorry, tomorrow, about the book.
No, I think I'm good.
All right, cool. That is Jurassic Park. Go watch it. Annoyingly, Matt dropped off of Max. I watched it on Max, and there was like I fell asleep during the last 15 minutes, and then booted it up the next morning to finish it off, and it's like, nope, it's gone now. So
That's
for
incredibly annoying.
yeah, fortunately, I of course own a disc of this, so I just pulled out the Blu-ray.
Of course you do.
Do 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 doof.
All right, Matt. Before we go, I just wanted to have a quick chat about what we did over our break, what kind of stuff we got up to, what we watched, that kind of thing. You wanna start us off, and we'll kind of go back and forth.
Sure. Yeah. I'll be. I've got like three things I wanted to talk about. I think you have 3 things you want to talk about. So, the first, it's funny. The first thing I watched with my parents was Dune Part 2, and that was kind of funny because they know that Dune is super important to me, but I don't think they knew how important until that viewing. And it was also kind of funny because they were when you're watching a movie with your family, people kind of talk over the movie in and out. It's
Sure.
normal. And they were saying all of the things that I know are So, for example, there's this big action scene the first time the Fremen attack one of the Harkonnen sand crawlers, and then after that action scene is over, they shoot the Fremen who are just like waiting out in the distance, shoot the sand crawler with the laser and destroy it. And my dad, I believe, is like, why didn't they just do that first? and and which is a totally reasonable question to ask if you're watching this movie. And the reason is you can't use lasers on shields, but that's not in the movie. And I use this as a microcosm because there are like 3 to 5 other things in this movie where a perfectly reasonable person would be like, what was that? Why did that happen? Why did they do it? Why did it? And the answer is always like, some esoteric bullshit from the book. Okay. but it's always not in the movie. So it's funny because I love this movie. I absolutely love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of recent years. But watching with them, I was actually forced to be like, they really should have nodded towards some of these things, because it very reasonably leaves you confused if you just have no idea why they're not shooting at the ornithopter with the laser. That's it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.
That's
I
all.
hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, I mean, I this is one of those things that like I left the first movie going like, I don't think anyone that's not crazy is gonna like this movie, and I kind of felt the same way about Dune Part 2, and it is kind of remarkable to me they did as well and were as popular as they were, because they are kind of almost designed impenetrable films.
Yeah, I think you're just meant to appreciate them as kind of an acid trip and not like for the plot.
Sure. No,
but
absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway, I just thought it was funny because I never really I admitted to myself that the movie had that flaw. Yeah. Anyway.
How do you feel about the fact that Denis Villeneuve probably not getting a Best Director nomination for this movie?
Not even a nomination.
Yeah, probably not.
That's pretty surprising. I mean, as usual, I didn't see that many movies that came out this year, so maybe the slate is just absolutely packed with amazing performance, with amazing directing showings. But I'm surprised. My impression was that Dune 2 was, regarded as just like an incredible accomplishment of filmmaking, so I would have expected a nomination at least.
Yeah, it was, and we'll see. The nominations, of course, aren't out for a couple more weeks, but it just seems like it's probably not going to happen. I think one of the things that's also happening is they everyone calls it like the Lord of the Rings effect, because like this is a standard kind of set by Return of the King, where the Oscars really completely ignored the series until it got to the third one of the trilogy and then pummeled it with Academy Awards. It seems like a similar thing is going to happen for Dune. It probably will be nominated for Best Picture, just because we have the 10 Best Picture slots versus 5 for every other category. But it's not going to, I don't think it's going to do very well at the Oscars this year. I think they are saving a lot of the accolades for the third film, which is really interesting considering I am very curious how Villeneuve makes Dune Messiah work as both the standalone movie and also like a completion of this trilogy of his.
Me too. He must have something in mind that is different from what is just on the page. But that's fine. I'm excited to see what he brings us.
So we are going to be doing I kind of bearing the lead here a little bit, like from here we're going to pick up our Oscars catch up series once again, and we're going to be watching the films nominated for Best Picture. We are not going to do another episode on Dune Part 2 because we actually did one last year after we watched that movie. So we're probably just going to skip that. We don't need to catch up with Dune Part 2. We've both caught up with it and did an episode on it. But it will, I think, be nominated for Best Picture.
Cool. All right. Well, what did you watch this winter?
Well, I got to go to the movie theater a couple times, actually.
That's crazy.
One of the times was with our friend Elliot and Jenny. Elliot is in the United States of America, or he was. I think he's about to leave. But he drove up to Dallas. He's been staying down in Austin. And Jenny came up as well. She lives down there. And we went to the movies and we saw Nosferatu, because that's a film that my wife will not go with me to see because it's a spooky one. This is David Eggers' new film and an adaptation of the 1922 film. It's so good. I love it so much. It's so creepy and atmospheric, and I kind of understand why people might hate it. But it's such a wonderful, wonderful movie. You might hate it, Matt, but it's like, oh, how many have you seen any Robert Eggers films?
I I think is that the Vitch?
Yeah, the Witch,
Yeah.
the Lighthouse, the Northman are
No,
his three
I
other
haven't
ones.
seen those, but I've seen the Witch. Oh,
So I think it fits. You have an understanding of like what he likes to
yeah.
do with like tone and he's very much an auteurist and how he likes to shoot things. It is a slow burn of a movie. It takes its time, but it's absolutely like beautiful and haunting and terrifying and all the things. It's such a great movie. I really really had a fantastic time with it. Like just so many individual shots where you're just like holy shit, and then some great performances as well. So I heartily recommend Nosferatu, knowing it's probably not for everyone.
Awesome. Maybe after a few more of these Flanagan movies, I will be able to stomach a scary movie like Nosferatu.
So I will say that like there's like a couple jump scares in it, like one that almost opens the movie that I just was not expecting at all because that's not really what Eggers does. But um, it's like it's not what the movie is. The movie is more like this like low hum of dread and powerful images and wonderfully terrifying voices and that kind of scary. So it's not like a gonna something's gonna pop out of you every couple minutes type thing.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
But yeah, I would see it. It's in theaters right now. I bring this up. So the other movie I saw was A Complete Unknown, which is the Bob Dylan biopic, which we're gonna probably be doing an episode on later because I'm pretty sure it's gonna get nominated for an Oscar. So I'm just gonna hold off on that conversation until we get that movie.
Makes sense.
All right, what else did you watch?
We've already done a full episode on Severance, so I'm not going to say much about Severance here. But we rewatched basically the entirety of Severance because my brother and sister-in-law had not seen Severance, and I and my parents had, but me and my parents were both like, "You haven't seen Severance," and we both were totally down to watch it again because I've only watched it the one time that we did prior to that podcast. And once again, Severance is amazing. Not all TV shows I think are rewatchable in their entirety.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually kind of worried that Severance wouldn't be because it is this sort of mystery box adjacent story. But it was totally rewatchable. I loved rewatching it. In fact, I think I appreciated certain aspects more because I was able to, pay attention to different things. Also, it's very fun to watch your loved ones enjoy something that you like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was robbed though because the one episode we didn't watch together was the last episode because he had to leave. So I was
Oh man.
robbed of watching his reaction to the last 20 seconds of that season.
Oh,
But I did talk to him about it later, so that was all right.
that's great. Yeah, Severance season 2 is coming in just a couple weeks.
That's
the 17th.
Perfect.
I am very worried about it.
Oh no.
It was in development hell for a long time. Ben Stiller like originally planned to like leave the project and in the second season, and then he kind of came back to the project because development was so bad. The cost of it has ballooned. Like Apple is spending an absurd amount of money on this story. Like I hope this is the planned end of it because I just don't think they're gonna spend any more money on this show after this. I think the season costs like $300 million or something, and there's just like no way that many people are watching Severance on Apple TV Plus. But so I'm a little worried, but I hope it's good.
Yeah. I'm a little worried too, but I guess we'll find out soon.
Yeah.
All right. What's your next thing?
I watched Squid Game season 2, which premiered on Christmas Day because nothing better than celebrating the birth of the savior by watching people die for money. This is I'm really torn on this because like I watched the first Squid Game. I'm pretty sure we did an episode on it, or at least we did like a mini thing on, I don't remember. I remember talking about it with you and I think with Michael as well.
Yeah, I think maybe I hadn't watched the whole season, so it was kind of touchy in terms of me not having seen the ending of the season. But
Sure,
yeah.
sure. I enjoyed that show a lot. I liked. I thought it was the same reason like hundreds and millions of other people really liked it. I thought it was very captivating. I liked what it was doing. I liked the ending, and I was like, "You don't need to do more of this. What we don't, we can be done. We can be done with this. We don't need to make more." So I was really hesitant going into the second season because I just like this show shouldn't exist, and is it just gonna do the same thing again and be like, oh, more we have to, because this is like the most downloaded thing on Netflix ever, and so they have to kind of make a whole enterprise around this thing. Like there was a there was a Squid Game themed Yule log on Netflix on Christmas Day. It's such the weirdest property. It's like this thing that is in many ways like extremely Korean,
Uh-huh.
has become this like worldwide hit, and so I in summary, I liked the second season. I will say it suffers from basically. I think what happened is the creator of the show was told to make more. He wrote a storyline out for more, and then they decided to divide that storyline he wrote in half, and so 7 episodes of that will be in the second season, and then the conclusion of that story will be in the third season. So it is essentially half of a story. So we don't get to see the full conclusion on it. Um, I like what it's doing though, because it's doing this interesting thing. This little spoiler, but it introduces this new rule to the game, which is essentially after every Squid Game, everyone can vote on whether they want to leave, and they get to keep the money that's been divide the money that's been accumulated up until that point, and they get to vote after every game. So in the first season, everyone could vote like before the game started or after the first game. I think they let everyone vote if they wanted to leave or stay. This time they get to do it after every single game, and they get to take home the money that they've earned at that point. And it's a really interesting thing, because I think what the creator of the show is doing with this season of Squid Game is like, democracy, is it good actually?
Uh-huh.
And that's just like a fascinating enough wrinkle on the whole thing to keep me engaged throughout the 7 episodes. We'll see. Like again, it's like halfway through a story, so I really can't like conclude on what this story is doing until we see season 3. But I think it's worth your time if you enjoyed the first one. Like the games themselves are like, it just like it's always fascinating to watch this stuff.
Yeah.
In a morbid kind of way.
For sure, yeah. I mean, it's on that like hell is other people science fiction dystopia axis
Yeah.
of stories that are they're always fun.
And I want to take your spot to go into my third thing, because I think it strongly relates to what I just talked about. Because speaking of this morbid fascination and watching people do these things to themselves, I also watched Amazon Prime's The Beast Games.
And this is the Mr. Beast games.
Yes, this is the Mr. Beast games. So it turns out Amazon just gave millions and millions of dollars to Mr. Beast to produce his own reality TV show. This is actually really complicated because, as you probably know, and a lot of people know, there's a lot of things coming out about Mr. Beast and his empire right now that are less than favorable. There are also a lot of very specific things coming out about this show and this production. I think 5 of the cast members are joining together in a class action lawsuit to sue Mr. Beast and Amazon for their treatment while on the show. I don't know all the details of that. I don't know any, so I'm not going to conclude on any of that outside stuff around the show. What I do know is that Mr. Beast watched Squid Game and said, yeah, that, I'm going to do that.
Oh God.
Like, and like, yes, let's be clear here. There is an important distinction. They are not murdering the contestants after they fail the games, and that is true. It's an important distinction to make, but that's like it.
Uh-huh.
It like these are like I've watched all 4 episodes out of this like morbid curiosity, but like it is essentially like these are not like physical challenges or that kind of games to advance on. So the whole thing is there's 1,000 contestants. They're trying to win $5 million. But not none of the games, but the majority of the games are not like physical challenges or things like that. It's mental fuck you up shit. It's stuff like all 1,000 contestants were lined up in rows, and one person in each row has to sacrifice themselves for the rest of the team, or else the whole row goes home. And it's like shit like that, where it's just like constantly making people turn on each other and betray each other. There was this one thing where there was 4 captains nominated for each team, and they got to sit there watching this money counter go up. And if they press the button, they win the money, and they get to stay, but their entire team goes home. And so it's just like 500 people watching 4 guys watch a counter count up to $1 million and wondering when they're going to say, yeah, I'm willing to fuck over everyone else. And then like halfway through the counter, he's like, oh, by the way, the person who takes the money also gets to still go forward in the game. It's just like, it's total mindfuck shit. It's just like all these things are watching people try to fuck people over or betray. It's all mental torture essentially to drive people insane. And like, people are like very emotional in the show, to the point that multiple times I've turned to my wife and been like, it's kind of ridiculous they're like crying about this, right? They like just got here, they weren't going to win anything, why are they crying so much? And then you start to realize, oh, it's because they've been emotionally fucked with. That's why they're crying so much. And it's like it's Squid Game. It is Squid. The only difference is a guy wearing a mask doesn't shoot them in the face after they lose. They just lead them off somewhere. But it is a guy in a creepy mask still, because he made the whole thing to look like Squid Game too. It's so weird. It's so weird that this came out like 2 days before Squid Game. It's so strange. I can't believe this happened. I don't know how it's doing, because they're in this really hard place where like I think Mr. Beast like fired his publicist or something. and so they haven't done any publicity for this thing very much. And they don't feel like they can, because every time he goes in interviews, people are like asking him about all these allegations that he's refusing to address. So like, it's just not getting publicized. It seems like Amazon spent so much money on this thing. I have no idea if it's recouping that money or what. It's just very, very, very strange. The whole thing is weird.
It's fascinating. I mean, it's funny because we've had stuff like Survivor, for decades at this point, but like what you're describing does sound like a lot more sort of aggressively dystopian. Yeah. Whereas, because like I feel like there's a kind of nobility to Survivor, where it's more about like, yeah, we're putting people through challenges, and the idea is to put them under strain, but like fundamentally we're trying to find the one who's like the toughest. And this is more just like, no, we just want people to suffer. That's all we really care about. It's not about rewarding virtue in any way, no matter how tenuous. It's just torture.
So here's one of the challenges, and they've done this multiple times. So one of the challenges, everyone has to divide into a group of 3 and go into a small box. And then once you're all in the small box, we tell you, oops, sorry, one of you has to sacrifice themselves within 5 hours. And the other 2 get to move on. If no one in your group sacrifices themselves, all 3 of you go home. And it's just, okay, congratulations, you're all locked in a box together. Figure out which one of you is willing to sacrifice themselves. And it's just like, that's torture. It's torture, because like they tell you, all right, everyone team up, groups of 3, and you team up with your friends. Of course you do. And then you're immediately told, oh, by the way, one of you has to go home, or possibly all of you. And they did the same thing again this week, where there's 6 seats on a helicopter to go to Beast Island. There's like 10 teams of 6 left, and it's everyone get in teams of 6. So everyone's like, we're going to compete against each other. Then the winning team of 6 is going to get to go on the helicopter. And then Mr. Beast is like, no, fuck you. You all have to pick one of you from each team that gets on the helicopter, and there's more than 6 teams, so the fastest 6 get one person. And it's just like people are panicking. And this one team, they all agreed to give one guy except for one person. They're like, they did it through coins, so you like give once the person has 6 coins, they get on the helicopter. So 4 of the other people gave one person their coins, and one guy was holding out. He's like, no, I don't want to give you my coin, I want to be the one. And then so like time was ticking down, and at the very end, the guy who only had his coin and only his coin said, let's just rock paper scissors for it. And he wins, and he just grabs the guy's other 5 coins and just leaves. And the guy's like, wait, what the fuck just happened? Like, what? It's like the most monstrous behavior of people you can imagine.
Oh, no, this is
And
horrible.
it's awful. It's absolutely awful.
Oh, this is
And yet I can't stop watching it.
so upsetting to me. Um,
So that's Beast Games on Amazon Prime.
Don't think I'm gonna watch that, but
I would strongly urge you not to.
Okay. Well, thanks for watching it. Thanks for taking that bullet for us.
Oh my God. Okay, what's your last thing?
My last thing is there's this show on, is it Amazon? I can't be bothered to check. It's called Secret Level, and it's like, I don't know, 10 episodes long or something like that. And each episode is like relatively short, like 20-minute long. Sort of that modern CGI thing where you just make a really, really high quality CGI movie that's short. Kind of like Love, Death, and Robots in a way.
Okay, cool.
But every episode is a different video game. It's called Secret Level. Every episode is a different video game. And it's interesting because most of these, I don't have any idea what they are. I haven't actually watched the whole show. And I don't think I will, because they're not connected to each other narratively. They're sort of just like, here's a little vignette from the world of this game. And it's a fun idea. And I watched the reason I'm bringing it up is that I watched the Warhammer 40K. I guess it's based on the like Space Marine and Space Marine 2 games, because the main one of the main characters of the episode is Titus, which is the main character from those games, and he's not particularly in the lore other than those games. But it's pretty great because I've ranted at length before about the YouTube film Astartes, which was like a one-man fan film.
Yeah, I do remember you talking about that. Yeah,
and this 20-minute episode feels a lot like Astartes. And it turns out that the guy who made Astartes was actually on the staff of this episode, which is pretty cool. I don't think he had like a leadership role necessarily, but you can still kind of see like the design philosophy from Astartes. And I don't know, I love it. I think what I realized has happened is like, I was never really into Marvel when I was younger. So when the MCU came around, I was like, that's cool, but that was never really my thing, but I can appreciate it. But Warhammer 40K was my thing when I was a young, preteen to teenager. And the fact that now like we're getting like high quality Warhammer 40K stuff, it does tickle me in a way to be like, yeah, this is what I've kind of wanted to see on some level my whole life, and now I get to see it. That's really cool for me personally. And I really like this. I really liked the Warhammer 40K Secret Level episode. The end.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm looking at this right now. Not a lot of. It looks like there was a Mega Man episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. There's an Armored Core episode, Matt. That was written. The short story was written by Peter Watts.
Okay,
that's your guy.
I will be watching the shit out of that. Yeah, there's a Pac-Man one which I haven't watched, but like it looks like grimdark Pac-Man. I don't know what to make of that. That one I do want to watch just because it looks kind of wacky.
Oh wow, Keanu Reeves plays the lead of the Peter Watts one as well.
Okay. I'll be watching that one. You'll hear from me.
And also Arnold Schwarzenegger's son is in it as well.
Oh, cool. Wow.
No, this seems cool. I don't have any specific like allegiance to Warhammer 40K, so I don't know if I'll run out and watch that one because I feel like. So I mean, it's probably a question I don't know if you could answer, but like, does it work even if you have no knowledge of what the hell any of that stuff is?
I think so. I mean, so the thing about both this and Astartes, for that matter, is like there's very little talking. It's mainly you're just watching Space Marines wreck shit, which works on any red-blooded man, right?
Sure.
And like there's a lot of sort of like metaphysical stuff that happens, and it's like I urge you to just go with it, because it's like, look, there's not like an explanation in the lore for like what's happening. It's like, it's magic. it's evil magic. So like that's kind of the attitude to have toward both Astartes and Secret Level, is just like, it's just let it wash over you.
Cool.
And again, it's like 20 minutes long. So
yeah. No, that sounds cool. I will check some of these out for sure.
Cool.
Awesome. I believe that was all we watched.
Yep.
I think.
Yep, I think so.
Yeah. It was a fun break. I enjoyed myself. It was fun getting to go to the movie theater again and see some good stuff. I one of my New Year's resolutions is I'm going to start tracking the things I've watched again, because I used to be really good at that, and then I stopped doing it. And then at the end of the year, I was like, I asked my wife, "What was your favorite TV show you watched last year?" And she was like, "What did we watch last year?" It's like, I don't remember.
Yeah. Last year was weird. Last year, I don't want to go into a whole tangent here at the end of this episode, but like I normally do a lot of like journaling in my life, and I did none of that in 2024. And as a consequence, I have a very hard time remembering what happened in 2024. I just realized a bunch of stuff that I thought happened in 2024 actually happened in 2023. The only thing I'm sure happened in 2024 is Kingslingers Live in Bangor.
Yes.
It's the only event that
did definitely happen.
That definitely happened in 2024. Everything else I'm not too sure about. But
yeah, so I think I'm going to attempt to keep better track of this stuff in order to avoid this exact thing from happening.
One weird thing is I normally watch a bunch of Christmas movies at Christmas time, and this year we only watched The Grinch, and we watched Red One.
Oh my god!
Which
so did I.
Which I don't.
Maybe we need to have an after dark chat about Red One.
Yeah, we can have an after dark chat about Red One. Yeah.
Oh my god, that fucking movie.
But I didn't watch my normal gamut of Christmas movies for some reason.
Yeah, I didn't either. I mean, I watched Die Hard, which we both agreed was a Christmas movie.
Yep.
I watched different variations of The Grinch about 40 times because my son was obsessed with that.
Sure.
And then I watched It's a Wonderful Life on Christmas Eve like I normally do. And that was about it.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. And we begin the year on a high note, I think. It's going to be hard to find a movie that beats Jurassic Park, but we're going to try for the rest of the year. If you have any opinions on Jurassic Park or on any of the stuff we talked about that we watched over the break, feel free to reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on Instagram at doofmedia, X at doofmedia, all the places. You can also check us out on Reddit. It's reddit.com/r/doofmedia.
Yeah. Also, please consider, if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, please consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head over to patreon.com/doofmedia and join us at any of the available levels for a whole bunch of bonus content. We're running our book club vote right now for the first month of 2025, and patrons get to vote in that. So please make sure you check that out. And as part of that, don't forget, the 3rd of January at 9:30 p.m. Central Time, we will be live on YouTube discussing the novel Jurassic Park that goes along with this episode we just did on the movie. So don't miss that. It's going to be a really fun conversation, I think.
That's right. I look forward to that. Also, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, next week's episode begins our Oscars recap series. We're going to be taking a look at 9 films that are nominated for Best Picture. Of course, those 9 films actually haven't fully been selected yet because the Best Picture nominations don't come out till the 17th of January. But we wanted to get a jump start on this so we can finish close to on time for the Oscars themselves. Next week's episode, we're going to be starting on Wicked, which I think is the most sure thing for Oscar nominee right now. It's actually, Matt, possibly close to presumptive favorite for Best Picture, which I never expected to happen. But we'll be starting that series next week on Wicked, which is available to rent right now on most platforms and buy, like I did, because my son has demanded we watch it. We watched it on New Year's Eve, Matt, and I've watched it 2 times since then because Logan wants to watch the movie with the Wicked Witch. Want to see the green Wicked Witch.
That's amazing. It makes me excited to watch it.
That'll be next week. So we'll see you then.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.